Hey YouTubers, in this presentation I will look at 5 of the 200 proofs in the book made by E Dubay, which is called 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. I basically will show that Mr. Dubay has a lack of evidence, only uses poor or invalid reasoning for the construction of his arguments, and will only make statements that are known or intentionally used by him to be misleading, inaccurate or false. So he should call his book 200 Fallacies and Lies to Prove the Earth is Flat. He's so desperate to prove the Earth is flat that he needs to work out the fact that there should be no flights on the southern part of the globe, and that should then prove that the Earth is flat. So if we show him wrong, then we basically have covered 5 of his proofs in one blow. I will show you in a 1 minute that he's so easily to debunk, and then later on, after that 1 minute, I will go in more detail of what he does wrong and where he is misleading you. So for those who think there are no flights on the southern hemisphere, just have a quick look at least 12 of them, and we also have a quick look at all the websites of the airports where you can actually see that the planes have landed, are ready for boarding, and at what gates they are. So it is all verifiable. First, a quick 1 minute debunk. So that is easy, and actually you should be convinced now. Next time, if you can't find a direct flight, then you'd better use the search engines on the internet in a proper way. So let's see how Dubay creates his lies. His proof number 43 claims that all the flights in the southern hemisphere should go over the Antarctic, and because that is the quickest straight line, and they do not, because the Earth is flat. And the excuse people then use is that they claim the temperature is too cold for air travel. Now this is the picture he shows you, and the first manipulation or lie is that he places the flights to Santiago de Chile here from Sydney and from Auckland, whereas these are the right positions, and that is where Santiago de Chile is. And then you see already that also on this strange flat map of his, the flights would not go over the Antarctic, so we can scrap those two away. Then he talks about Perth to Sao Paulo, but if you look that up, it's more than 8,000 miles. There are not many planes that can do that distance. The same happens when you want to fly from New Zealand all the way at once to Johannesburg. Is also a non-valid flight simply because of the distances. Here he makes up a flight that I can't find even. It's from Johannesburg or whatever to a almost uninhabited part of the south of Chile. It just wants to make up flights so that you would think flights should go over the Antarctic. And the only reasonable valid flight would be that one, which is from Sydney to Johannesburg, which we later will see he never mentions again anymore. So if we now would take flights to cities that make more sense, because the distances would be feasible, then you would get the yellow lines, and then you see that there is no need to go over the Antarctic. Not even here, because if you then project it on an actual globe and you take what really is the shortest line, you see that they all stay away from Antarctica. So the fact that they don't go over there has nothing to do with the fact that Antarctica doesn't exist. It has to do with the fact that the shortest routes are the routes going around Antarctica. Because, Mr. Dubai, it is a globe, and on a globe the shortest distance is not a straight line over a flat Earth projection of that globe. It simply means you don't understand the globe. Now, and then the reason why planes would not go there was that somebody apparently is claiming that the temperatures are too cold for airplane travel. That's complete bullshit, and I really wonder who your source is. It can happen, of course, in extreme winters that there are certain days that you cannot fly there, but that is a false statement if used in general. Hell, the only way to get to the South Pole is by plane, and well, you can fly almost there and then do the last degree on skis, which you can book your holiday experience there, or all the people that work there, of course, go there by plane, and there are many researchers that work there on shifts, and lots of planes go to the center of the South Pole, to the Scott Edmundson Polar Station. And if you then are not a scientist and you still would like to have a look on Antarctica from above, then during New Year's Eve you can book a flight if you have the money, and then celebrate a new year in full sunlight above the Antarctic. So, all the things you mentioned are not true. The quickest route is not a straight line, because it goes over a curve, and there is no evidence whatever that temperatures would be too cold to fly, because many planes go there. So you are debunked. Now, the next step is, you say, if you want to go from Sydney to Santiago, and then we have your proof number 44, and you claim that all flights are rerouted. Now here you have the direct flight, Mr. Dubai, and it is there every day in both directions. It's a daily flight. You claim you will be rerouted over the US. Well, that would be very silly. Of course, if you are searching for flights and you do not include the direct flights, you will get, of course, this type of alternative routes. The problem here is that you will have to get out of the plane into another one, probably even from another airliner, and that would be highly noticed by the people that thought they were booking a direct flight. So it simply does not make sense. It already takes you from Sydney to Seattle 14 hours, while the direct flight takes you there or also in 14 hours. So you lose a lot of time, especially in waiting for other planes. But actually you are debunking yourself here completely, because this is the line you say you then actually fly if you map out this map to what the flat Earth would look like. But there is a big problem. The shortest of the flights you have there, of those three, is still over 12,000 miles, and there are no planes that can cover that. It is simply impossible. And with that, Mr. Dubai, you have debunked the flat Earth as a real option. It cannot exist because no plane can cover that distance, and you already have shown here 3 flights that are there on a regular basis. But the direct flight is there as well. It takes you 14 hours. Here you can see the Qantas 28, which goes from Santiago to Sydney, or the Qantas 27, which goes from Sydney to Santiago, and this is Sydney Airport. That tells you at gate 8 the plane has departed and is expected at that time in Santiago. So, debunked. Then you come up with the route Johannesburg, South Africa to Perth, or even to Mauritius as a refueling possibility. Well, on a globe that looks to be the most normal route, which it is, it's like 6,000 miles. You think, however, that you are rerouted via Dubai, which doesn't make sense, because if you look at distance already, it is twice the distance as it is in real life. And you should notice when you have to spend twice the time in a plane. So here we have the South African Airways 281 that goes from Perth to Johannesburg, and distance and flying time match close enough, and there is no detour required. And the SA 280 is the opposite direction, and it is there every day. But you can also go to Mauritius, which you thought not to be there simply because you didn't look that well, and you can take, so this is from Mauritius to Perth, and the flight back from Perth to Mauritius is the 441. On the Mauritius webpage you can see that when I was making this, the plane had landed nicely on time. So, debunked. Your proof 46, which is a very silly one because you debunk your own flat Earth again. First you come up with a commercially not interesting flight, Cape Town to Buenos Aires. You cannot just say pick 2 cities and then think that 2 cities always have direct flights. Yeah? That would mean that we would have hundreds of thousands of direct flights. No, it is not. That's not the way it goes with commercial airlines. But you then map it out like this, as if these were the only possible routes, and you simply missed the one that brings you to Johannesburg, directly here to Sao Paulo, and then a quick short flight to Buenos Aires. But on your flat map you even show that the flights should go around, and then you say that is completely understandable option on a flat Earth. No, it is not. On a flat Earth the completely understandable solution is from Cape Town directly to Buenos Aires, to Sao Paulo, and then to Buenos Aires. That would be on the flat Earth a logical conclusion, because this is shorter than having to go all that way and then that way. So, basically you debunk your flat map because the direct flight would make sense on the flat Earth. And it isn't there simply because, as I said, it is a non-commercial viable flight. You cannot just expect every city to have direct flights. Why don't you try to book Berlin to Washington or Denver to Seoul? You can't with direct flights, although they sound to be very valid flights. And that does not mean that immediately the North Pole does not exist, or that there are no flights on the Northern Hemisphere, simply because you cannot find the direct flights. And just to show, here is Washington, Berlin, which requires one stop at least, and else 2 or more stops. So it's easily debunked. Your proof 47 is Johannesburg to Sao Paulo in Brazil. Well, that's not a problem. It's the how do you call it? Code shared flight. So it is the South American Airlines A343, which is the same as the South African Airlines 222 from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo. I followed it the whole day. You can then actually see it make the turns and start landing on the international airport of Sao Paulo. We can then find the plane as en route and on time, and it is it departed in Johannesburg and it is now planned to arrive at Terminal 3 in Sao Paulo. Here is the flight SA223 that is heading back directly there to Johannesburg. So, debunked. The other routes make no sense. It's only if you try to get cheaper tickets and take some cheap flights. But you would spend more than a day flying around half of the globe, while you can do it directly. Now here we come up with your proof 48, which is one big lie, because you claim in order to go from Johannesburg to Santiago, you do a refueling stop in Dakar in Senegal. Now, then let's have a look. I cannot find any decent flight from or to Dakar. And I thought, well, if this exists on a flat earth, and this would be a logical solution, I should find flights from Johannesburg, but I could also find, of course, Dakar to Santiago. Well, guess what? There are no direct flights. You see, I think this on, I said I want those flights, but they didn't come up. With one stop, it sets you back 2,500 pounds. And you will be en route for 26 hours for a flight that normally takes only like 12. And the moment you get to the 2-stop solutions, you end up with flights like 63 hours. Are you really kidding me? You are lying. This is debunked. Now, as we saw in the beginning, this was one of the viable flights, but he isn't even mentioning Sydney to Johannesburg, and guess what? I think he found that there was a direct flight, and that is why he can't mention it. But let's just have a look. Johannesburg, yes, the QF63 from Sydney is arriving, and it is there, just like the flight back, which is the Qantas 64. Distances and flight times all match very well, and any detour would take too much time. Now, the other one was Auckland to Santiago, which you have drawn here as well. You don't mention that also. Probably you discovered that it exists, and yes, you are right, it exists. So, there it goes, en route. And that is it. Debunked, debunked, debunked. Bullshit. You didn't look. Now then we have some other assholes like Rolling Thunder 42, who claims I spent a day trying to travel from continent to continent, and he couldn't find any of the 12 I already showed you. 144,000 who invents all kinds of refueling stops in his videos, and he cannot even calculate the flying distance on a curve. Cesar, mein deutscher Freund, who is very creative in picking non-interesting flights like Cape Town, Buenos Aires, Christchurch to Rio. Yes, they don't exist, but they don't exist because they're not commercially viable, not because the earth is flat and it is impossible to fly there. As I said, just try Berlin, Washington, Denver, Seoul, also no direct flights. It doesn't say anything if there is no direct flight. What says something is, like I showed, when they are there. And then made also one of these creative liars who cannot even calculate distances on his own true flat map, and who talks about radar tracking planes, and he doesn't even know how radar works. So all these guys are also, just like E Dubay, completely incapable of finding existing daily flights. It's just pathetic. So the only thing I can say to everybody, keep an open mind, be critical, check the data when it's presented, see the lies, detect the fallacies, and don't be afraid of the globe because you live on it. Oh yeah, and if any dude now wants to start talk about planes disappearing, etc., I already debunked that, so for that I would say just look at one of my other videos. Thanks you all for watching again. Love you.